We're back with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic. Boom, 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 kapow, kapow, kapow. You thought I was going to start seriously, and got to keep you guessing. I don't know what the threshold is, but I think if you stay longer than 10 seconds on a YouTube vid, it somehow helps. I don't really know. Should probably know. We have, ever since I switched the podcast from a business podcast to going hardcore into this ancient philosophy of Advaita Vedanta, I stopped looking at the metrics of things. But because this is not a podcast that you start to get the numbs, but I probably should know a little bit more about the intros. But I do know it helps to get straight into whatever the thumbnail and title are, to get right into it. So we're going to wait a few seconds. Wait for all the people that weren't committed to this video anyhow. We're going to wait for them to drop off. And now we've got the real ones. Got rid of the riffraff. It's just us. Oh, geez. The reflection for today is on this interesting distinction between East and West on the virtue of humility. In the West, we have cultivated this collective virtue of humility through Western traditions, through conventional approaches to Christianity, where humility is a practice. But in the East, humility is not seen as a practice. From Jainism to Vedanta to Buddhism and the Vedas, the four textbooks at the heart of all Eastern philosophy, the Vedas, and Vedanta being the philosophy of the Vedas. This approach views humility as the result of practice, not a practice. Humility is the lack of ego, and it is a lot of work to continually eliminate the ego. The doership, the sense of knowership, meaning that a sense of, I am the doer. I'm doing this. I made this happen. I started this company. I brought these kids into the world. I am the doer. That is blindness from reality. We're just surfing these waves. I know as a startup founder, a handful of companies, when something really starts to work, you are just riding some larger wave. Maybe you know how to surf a little bit, but the wave is doing the real work. Versus you might have the exact same experience with no wave and you're just paddling like crazy, but no market is swelling up and picking you up and carrying you. This I am the doer, or I am the knower. I know these things. I know how to do it. Ego is as simple, to see the blinding aspects of ego is as simple as the 8-year-old. It's like, I know. The 10-year-old that, I think if you plant your left foot when you swing the bat, I know. At 10 years old, at 45 years old, any sense of, I know. Those two words are two enemies to clarity, to knowledge, to wisdom, to awareness, to seeing things clearly. It's our two enemies are, I already know. Or I'm doing all of this. This is all me. This wouldn't happen if it weren't for me. That ego is blindness. To rid ourselves of the ego results in a growing humility. But it doesn't start with, let me practice humility. Because even that knot you get in of, I'm going to practice humility. It's like saying, I'm going to see clearly. You have all of these coverings, all of these veils, and saying, I'm going to see clearly. That's not the practice. The practice is to remove the veils. The result is that you see clearly. Humility in the West, additionally, is in relationship to others. Have humility, practice humility so that you can foster stronger bonds with your community. It is a virtue cultivated towards others, often seen as a means to cultivate stronger communal bonds, as a means to become more useful, more integrated in your community. But in the East, ego and a lack of humility is blinding darkness from reality for our own selves. It is inner darkness. It has nothing to do with a virtue towards others. It is a requirement. It is the result of practice, like seeing clearly, like any strength you build. That clarity, that strength is the result of practice. That is a requirement. That strength, that clarity, that humility is a requirement for knowledge of the self, knowledge of what is, awareness. It is a requirement. Humility is, hands down, it is a requirement for seeing things clearly, for being useful to your community. Most of all, for being useful to yourself. But again, it is not a practice. It is the result of practice. So what is the practice that results in humility, that results in extremely strong communal bonds, that results in extremely clear sight, wise decisions, unblinded by ego? The practice is knowledge. So to spell it out, knowledge gets you clarity. Clarity gets you more knowledge. And this nice little sparks that are offshoots, it's a whole lot of humility. Elimination of the ego. But it's knowledge. According to this philosophy of Advaita Vedanta, take it or leave it, knowledge that leads to clarity, that leads to more knowledge. Specifically, knowledge of the self, knowledge of the supreme, knowledge of who you truly are. Because in this philosophy, it's all the same thing. Knowledge, which leads to clarity. Increased awareness, which leads to more knowledge, which leads to more clarity, more awareness, which leads to more knowledge. A beautiful, beautiful flywheel. And like I said, and the offshoots are an elimination of ego, elimination of unnecessary, selfish desires, a cultivation of humility. But the practice is knowledge, pursuit of knowledge. What does that look like day to day? It's perhaps listening to a podcast episode like this. Extremely importantly, invaluably, then reflecting on the message. Ideally, you move beyond just this kind of entertainment. This is philosophical entertainment that is just an on-ramp, meant to be an on-ramp. This entire podcast project is meant to be an on-ramp to the real thing, like reading Vedanta treatise right in front of me. That is the soup to nuts, beginning to end compendium of the entire philosophy of Vedanta, the 5,000 plus year old philosophy in plain English. Or it's moving on to another book, Holocaust of Attachment. Phenomenal. Simple 2-hour read. Eventually, but on-ramps can be important in our journey. And I love doing this kind of podcast project to find people where there aren't typically many on-ramps to timeless, transformative philosophy, like on YouTube or Instagram. But this knowledge will lead to humility as a byproduct. But this knowledge, like on Instagram or YouTube, but this knowledge, when pursued sincerely, when reflected on, ideally it's 10 to 15 minutes of study, reflection every morning before the sun comes up. Some go up to 2 hours, but even if you're just starting with 10 to 15 minutes, whenever you can to start your day, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., something is certainly better than nothing. Some gym session, even if it's 15 minutes, is better than nothing. The more sincerely, the better. But 10 to 15 minutes study and reflection on a daily basis can be the beginning towards a whole lot. But 10 to 15 minutes to start your day can be the beginning of a whole lot of clarity, awareness, elimination of that ego and therefore humility. To reflect on these timeless concepts. Another word for Vedanta is Sanatana Dharma, which means eternal principles. To reflect on these eternal principles. When we reflect on them, when we pursue, digest, and reflect this kind of timeless knowledge, the result is humility. The result is communal bonds, usefulness to your household, to your neighborhood. All of those things that we extol around this virtue of humility in the West. It's all of those things. And so much more. It is a huge cache of other virtues as well, all with the same input and this explosion of output on the virtue side of things. The input being pursuit of knowledge itself, reflection on the words of the masters, the lighthouses throughout history, and that reflection results in this four-dimensional explosion of humility, of honesty, of usefulness, of clarity, of love, of compassion, of clarity, of love, of compassion, of wisdom, all of those as the byproducts of one practice, pursuing knowledge. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.